Alright everyone, time for a little bit of a rant about something that Trump has done that I definitely do not like, which is he signed the temporary spending bill that was working its way through the legislature with bipartisan support. The problem is the Patriot Act reauthorization is in there. Now, he probably would have signed it if it was just the Patriot Act reauthorization. Trump is a law and order kind of president, and on that particular token, he's like, he goes like the gung-ho military route, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's certainly part of his presidency, and it helps him with some of the never-Trumpers who otherwise would refuse to support him. I guess it gives him a little bit of a tinkle in their Johnsons when they think about conducting surveillance on the population. The Patriot Act, it's about time for it to die. We've suffered under it for the whole decade and for almost the entire prior decade. It's been almost 20 years of the Patriot Act. Does it make anybody safer? No. The idea of mass surveillance has already been discounted by the former head of the NSA several years ago when he said, well, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. We've got all of this material, and we don't really have a way to properly sort it. Machines and machine learning aside, it only goes so far. Computers can only do part of the job, but when you've got that kind of a pile of material, it takes a whole agency 1,000 years to actually find something meaningful. So basically, you're going on hunches, speculation, which constitutionally speaking is definitely dubious at best, and then occasionally, by random chance, finding that needle anyway, simply because you're combing through the haystack, and thankfully you found it because, you know, you averted some crisis. Let us remember that the Patriot Act had already been well underway when the Boston Marathon attack happened. You know, in regards to somebody who had been under surveillance for several years, the Chechen authorities, the Russian authorities, had told the FBI, hey, this person's been radicalized. They're actively planning to attack things. Keep an eye on him. His brother was openly talking about Osama and saying crazy shit on Facebook in public posts for a number of months, had been reported and looked into already, and still managed to carry out his attack, killing a bunch of people. The response of the government was to lock down fucking Boston instead of doing what they ought to have done, which is catch him beforehand. He's actively planning attacks. He's talking about it online. We've got instances where people... It's funny. Here's what I don't understand. How can any rational, sane person support the current status quo of our surveillance apparatus and the policing that goes on with regards to people putting material on the web or literature or whatever? How can you support that when it so obviously doesn't work? Time and time again, we have instances where people are openly expressing violent views, openly professing that they intend to do crazy shit. They're not even looked into. Nobody even talks to them. They don't even get questioned. But when somebody who is speculated offhand because of their political beliefs to maybe kind of sort of be a fanatic in training because of the YouTube libertarian to alt-right pipeline or radicalization through Twitter, they get looked into, they get deplatformed, they get fiscally deplatformed, they get to, the FBI comes in and harasses their family, they red flag laws, they get disarmed. You've got all of these unconstitutional and stupid things happening to people who likely would never become violent. And in some cases probably would only become violent because they're being literally alienated from society by that same behavior. Whereas you've got people who are already radical, already violent, already talking about radicalism and violence openly, professing their love for a Baghdadi or whatever. They don't even get talked to. I don't trust that at all. The Patriot Act is a relic of a former era in which people reacted with fear after a terrorist attack. The fact is that our response to 9/11 sucked. Our response to 9/11 should be open warfare. It should have been clearly identifying who was responsible and eliminating them. Simple as that. We could have tested out all our new toys the same way we did with shock and awe on steroids and just been done with it. We could have made it clear that day, hey, if you attack us, we're going to retaliate 1,000 times worse, indiscriminately. Nobody's going to blame us. Fuck off. Who cares? Look, 500,000 civilians died in Iraq in the wake of invading there under the auspices of liberation, getting rid of Saddam. Saddam helped do 9/11, none of which were true. WMDs. Everything was a lie. We invade, 500,000 people die. These same people would have shed a lot of crocodile tears if 10 or 20,000 people had died if we had just gone in and eliminated the military complex there entirely under the same auspices using more high-tech means, instead of landing 500,000 fucking people on the ground for no reason, or whatever insane troop total we had there in the country at peak. Afghanistan. Oh, we gotta go find Osama. He wasn't even there. That was so much for that intel that you get under the auspices of the Patriot Act. The NSA surveillance, Project Echelon, and all of these other wonderful things that the government has. Yet they still can't stop attacks. Now, some people, think about the other part of it. For diplomatic reasons, you're trying to fight off propaganda from China and Russia. Cast the U.S. as the good guy. Okay. How does it make any sense, then, to get into a situation where the surveillance looks either completely dumb, that is, it doesn't work, costs a lot, and you look inept, or it looks evil. It looks like you're not even trying. You're not even trying to stop the attacks. The fact is this. This is the cold, hard, sad fact about the world. We will never be fully safe. Utopia is unachievable. It's not going to happen. There will always be criminals. There will always be abusive people. People will violate your NAP. States will fall. Economies will be shattered. Wars will break out. There will be nuclear accidents and plagues and asteroids. Terrible things happen. We're in a chaotic universe. The Patriot Act is not going to solve that. It's not the balm of Gilead to our wound. It's not going to help. I oppose reauthorization. I think it's stupid. It's the same as allowing NSA data collection, which I believe they scaled back on finally because they said it was worthless. They think they abandoned the better part of their programs, at least publicly, have been in part abandoned at this point, if I remember correctly. The NSA, but the Patriot Act still goes strong. Oh, free speech zones, ha ha ha. You know, it's blatantly unconstitutional. The blanket surveillance that it authorizes was never legal to begin with. I expect it's going to be like Japanese internment. 10, 20 years from now, in more enlightened times, hopefully, some SCOTUS decision is going to be handed down, striking it down and apologizing to people that were profiled under the auspices of the Patriot Act. It's what's going to happen. It'll be the same as McDonald versus Chicago saying, oh yeah, sorry we violated your firearm rights for the last century. We're sorry that the Cruikshank decision was never fully legal to begin with because it was all sorts of fucking screwy. We're sorry about that, guys. Yeah, by the way, fuck off. We're not going to, revisit the sentences of anyone that was negatively affected by that. That's what they'll do. My hope is that liberty is promulgated. In some ways, over time, it has been. There are certain things that are improving now in the U.S. and in some cases elsewhere in the world. The Patriot Act is not one of them. Should have scrapped it. By the way, it was funny because I only knew about this because a never Trumper tipped me off to it. Yeah, Trump signed it, and I opposed that. And he should have looked at the budget deal and said, oh, take this piece out, and then I'll sign it. That would have been lovely, although it's not realistic because he's a Republican, gung-ho military sort of dude. The Democrats supported it. Where were the Democrats to stop this from being reauthorized? They got spooked because of the possibility of a budget shutdown. Who fucking cares? We've had several shutdowns in recent history. Nothing happened. Who gives a fuck? Federal worker gets furloughed temporarily. Then they get their back pay when they go back to work a month later. Who fucking gives a shit? The Patriot Act is inconsequential. It saves no lives. It just wastes a bunch of money and violates the Constitution. Get rid of it. It's not necessary. It's not the early 2000s anymore. We're about to enter the 20s again. Get hip with the times. That's so, almost last century, literally speaking. 2001? It's a long time ago. You'd think at some point, a lot of the people that were alive then to make policy here or elsewhere are dead by now or retired. Can't we get with the times a little bit? I thought it was the current year and everything. That's about all. Peace out.